You're listening to Inside Eyes, and I'm your host, Laura Northrup. Hi, everyone out there listening. Welcome back to another episode of Inside Eyes. I'm your host, Laura Northrup, and this series is about the use of entheogens and psychedelics to heal from sexual trauma. In this episode, I interview Kate, who is a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. In our conversation, we talk about sexual trauma, her autoimmune disease, sexuality and relationships, and the healing path she has taken with ayahuasca and psilocybin. Before we get into the interview, a word of caution. None of the episodes in this series are suitable for children, and the topics are emotionally evocative, so please take care of yourself as the listener. So, Kate has an interesting story about how she came to understand what happened to her as a child, and I'm excited to share it because I know a lot of other survivors can relate. As a young adult, she did not remember the sexual abuse from childhood. I asked her if she could talk about the transition from not remembering to remembering, and our interview starts there.
So, as we kind of started to mention when we began talking about this together, was it didn't really come into my realm of awareness that this was a thing, right? That this was a way of being. Like, I knew it happened, but I started to really become interested and fascinated by the TV shows, the reality shows, the interview shows of the late 80s, early 90s, all those like Maury and Dr. Phil and all these people who were coming out and having these shows about these wild, right? Like really intense teens, usually these girls that were very emotional, very reactionary. They were all acting out, quote unquote, right? And so I started to see all of these young women, all of these people, and something about me just fascinated by them. And it's like, even though I could draw lines of separation, I definitely wasn't the most normal as far as having a single mother in the 80s, and she's a teacher, and we lived in a little community that was making great with what we had. So I thought we were cream of the crop, living the great life. And so to look at those other people on TV, it looked like they were having it way harder. So obviously their environment was what was going on, right? So I had nothing in common with them, and yet I felt like I understood. And when they spoke, it's like, I got it. I totally got where they were coming from and what they were asking for. And then when you see these cathartic changes, sometimes you'd see people come in and their specialty was these girls acting out and things, and they'd have these cathartic shifts. And it always seemed to be generalized. These young girls were looking for stable relationships with fathers. And I thought maybe that's my issue, is I didn't have my dad around growing up, so I'm just acting out because I didn't have a father. And it wasn't really until I was scripted in a show. So as a performer, as a singer and an actor, I was given a part in a play that I was playing a woman who had survived this trauma, sexual abuse. And so I started in I think it was my mid-late 20s, reading these psychology reports, trying to build this character. If I'm going to go play this person, I need to understand them completely. And I was reading these, the minutes, the logs, right, of these interviews that women were having in these meetings together, sharing about their journeys through the pain, the healing, the experiences and relationships in their own. And it really started to fucking scare me. Because there I am on a plane, Jedi, getting ready to perform in New York, reading about these women having these experiences, and I felt like I was in the room with them, it made so much sense. And then I started looking at myself in other ways, a lot of them say, if it wasn't outright, personal harm, it was really tiny, chronic, acute, right? So I've always over-groomed, bit my fingernails, picked at things, scratched at things, over-cleansed, over-scrubbed. And the body became gross and frustrating, constantly. And even though a lot of people say that's normal in adulthood, young adulthood and things like that, it just started to make sense. All the other things in my life that people were saying were control issues, It's like, wow, I'm obviously trying to isolate the chaos, the confusion with food or homework or schedule or dynamic, whatever it was. And then as I was becoming aware of all that, I was fighting these like really intellectual, logical thoughts of, you don't have any specific memories. Like,
to this point, you hadn't identified yourself as like as a sexual abuse survivor. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So this was like a pretty big, it sounds like, inner battle around some kind of intuition.
Like, I feel like this is right. I understand where they're coming from. They're telling my story. And yet I didn't have the source of my myth, right? I didn't have that. And so for another maybe 10 years, I pushed it away because I thought it's really morbid to want that. It's morbid to want to identify as a survivor because it's fucked up. Like, I don't want that history. I don't want that as who I am, and I shouldn't, like, romanticize it. So it created even more chaos and more of a schism, right? Because even though it was who I am and I totally understood it, then I said, but it's not. So I felt even more alone because I couldn't rectify how to feel that way and yet perceive myself as have had like a healthy environment growing up where nothing had happened.
Yeah, well, and when you say that you were even more alone, it sounds like even just being able to accompany yourself wasn't happening.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, like you're abandoning yourself.
Yeah. Which is like, I definitely was gaslit as a child. Like, it's a big thing that I'm still like currently working through in therapy, is the intense validation I need around anything at this point in my life because of years and years of being gaslit and told I was angry and being dismissed. And I'm also a very intense reactionary human being. So both my my now husband and I have similar experiences in our past. And so we tend to need to like make the other person feel like, I have to see that you feel how I feel or else I don't feel validated, right? It becomes this big thing where if you can't put words to it and nobody's willing to listen, that's like the next vehicle is to embody it.
Is to make them feel it.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too sidetracked in our interview, but everything you're bringing up, I think, is so significant around the way that sexual abuse survivors do experience a lot of anger, right? Like, of course, that makes sense, you know? And also the really intense need to be seen and validated and everything you're saying when there's something that can't be spoken to, which often is an experience in trauma, really needing some level of engagement that's emotional. And the ways that that can become really difficult in romantic relationships or interpersonal relationships as an adult. And yet there's a place that I think it emerges from that is wanting something that is so normal to want.
The intimacy has been violated.
Yeah.
So from the get-go, since this was something that happened to me as a child, the connections of what intimacy is like this whole other realm. I think that I'm like beginning to understand it better and better now. But, you know, it's like lines were crossed. Consent was not given. So then it becomes like, as a teenager, I was, again, these girls that I would see on screen, super hypersexually active. And as a teenager, I was hypersexually active. Like, I went and I told myself I was being sexually equal, right? So I thought at that point sexual equality was that if boys get to do whatever they want, then I get to do whatever I want. And I'm going to do it better. And it's something we talk about, one of my teachers in the jungle down in Peru. When you sit with the medicine, he says, you have to meet the medicine in its intensity, right? So you have to meet it. And I think that's what I thought I had to do afterwards, was start to show up in the world as intense, as aggressive as my perpetrator, right? Or was like, that's how you had to move through life. I had to be ready for that to happen at any time. And that also, that's what intimacy was that kind of like not actually a vulnerable, safe space. but a place that like had more of an aggressive, angry experience.
So, as Kate said, in her mid-20s, she started getting this pressing intuition that she had been sexually abused as a kid. About 10 years later, she still hadn't fully come to terms with the abuse. During that time, she was also diagnosed with an autoimmune disease and told by her Western medicine doctors that she would be living with that for the rest of her life. She also, at the time, learned about people using entheogens to heal physical ailments and decided to do a psilocybin ceremony. Here is her talking about an important experience she had during that first psilocybin journey.
The first ceremony, the medicine sat me down and I felt like I was having a panic attack. And I could feel the medicine say, notice where this is in your chest and your body. Scan your whole entire body. She was like, sweetheart, this is supposed to be joy, and you've labeled it fear. So I had taken the senses of arousal, of love, of sensual experience, and labeled that as terrifying, fearful. So I've actually, to that point, was living my life thinking I was really proud with this sixth sense of like, oh, this is not safe. We're not going to do it. Everybody's safe. Everybody's happy. Expectations are great. When really it was keeping me from living, right? I was living a very safe, very simple, very logical experience life, because that place where you like take a leap of faith, the place where you're so freaking excited that your adrenaline's pumping because you're in the high of joy, I had taught my body that was bad. It kind of like a way of like sensual dancing is going to attract negative attention that's also in my body. So psilocybin was like, we need to sit down and talk about how you've labeled these feelings in your body. You've got them all turned around. Wow. And that was a beginning. Mm-hmm. And then I started asking, so what about this immune disorder? What is this? And I started, San Pedro and all the things. And then it wasn't until a friend of mine offered me an ayahuasca ceremony that I went and sat for a weekend, 2 ceremonies in a row. And it was after the second ceremony, I woke up and all of my symptoms were gone. And they were gone for about 2 weeks. And that's when I realized that it was something in my environment, right? It was maybe not a literal thing, but a belief system, a way of being, that if I had gone out, done this ceremony, there was relief somewhere.
Like that this wasn't just that your body was ill and you would be ill for the rest of your life, but that there was something you could do about it.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of that was that first ceremony. Like a lot of people have those like birth experiences, like rebirth, or they see kind of like the soul contract of why they're here. And what I saw was this like little angry like hornet maggot, this little baby maggot in this bright, hot space. And I asked the medicine, what is this? And she's like, this is you. That this like tiny little angry hornet. And I was like, what is going on? And she says, your mother is internalizing all of her pain, all of her rage. So my father was adulterating and lying and abusive, and my mother was internalizing it. And stories like she tells me years later that she would spend nights on my nursing room floor, spending the evening there instead of sleeping in bed with him, and a lot of that stuff. And so at like, I don't know if it was maybe about 4.5 months, I detached my umbilical cord from the placenta and reattached it on another side, which people are like, you shouldn't have lived through that. And I gave my mother toxemia, so we were both in the hospital for a couple of weeks, making sure that we both lived through that. And then at 5 months, I tried to come out again, and finally I made it out 2.5 months early. So I was getting the fuck out of there. Like, I knew it wasn't healthy. And then I remember in the ceremony looking up and seeing this really weird warped glass ceiling. And it took me a second to realize that I was in the incubator in the NICU.
So just for clarification, so just now when you're describing being in the womb, and that you're it's not an infant when it's your like fetal self.
Natal, yeah.
Your little tiny inside baby time.
Yep.
You were trying to come out early.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you did. And then when you were in an ayahuasca ceremony, you had a vision of yourself in the NICU.
All of this over again, yeah.
Wow.
From like a whole different perspective. So I'd known the facts, and so I could tell myself the facts. Even when I was in ceremony, I was seeing this, and I was like, oh, I'm actually seeing all of what was happening. And then I saw this like head look over, and I knew who it was. It was Benny. Benny was the nurse who took care of me, and I didn't know that logically. It's like it all starts to come back, right? And I asked, what is this all about? Why are you showing me this? And the medicine asked, or let me know that this is part of my soul contract, that I had to be brought into the world in a place, in a way, where somebody who had no attachments to me could love me enough to help me live. And that would be what then I'm supposed to go do in this lifetime, is to love people and help them live without any actual physical human relation attachment to them. And, you know, so that was a whole, like, I don't know what to do with that information, but it was a beginning of this feeling of, why am I here? What am I doing? And that really was the spiral of it all, is not knowing, not understanding why I felt the way I felt, not knowing, not understanding where I was going, or why the experiences were all lining up the way they are, to be in that ceremony and to be given a little bit of permission. Like, it, more than what literally was seen, I started to understand that there was a larger story, that like the reasons we say everything has to happen in order for something to pass started to make sense. And just because of the relief from like the physical ailments, I was then really inspired. After 2 weeks, it comes back, and I'm like, I gotta go figure this out. I have to go find out what this is. I don't want to live the rest of my life in this pain. And at the time, I'm thinking physical pain. Very much thinking it's just physical pain still. And so it was, I went down to Peru, and I spent 3 months in the jungle, and it was probably about 2 months in. Ceremony 3-4 times a week. I'm drinking ayahuasca. Every day we're doing a different herbal remedy plant to like shift, move, heal, all the physical cleansing. So not only am I getting herbal medicine, I'm also getting these ceremonies. And it was one ceremony evening was just another woman and I, because we were practicing facilitating and becoming initiates. So just her and I in a little hut in the middle of the jungle. And it was very much, it just happened, this mother-daughter dynamic. Like all of a sudden, she has a daughter my age. And it was like her and I were mother-daughter dynamic. And the whole entire ceremony was, I can see now, like an unfolding of, we were both working on some relationship issues with our mother-daughter relationships in our own. And immediately I went over, she was struggling mentally, emotionally. She was emoting, and it's very unlike her to be like so emotionally kind of like volatile. And she asked for help, and I went and helped her. Felt an intense connection when I did. And then all of a sudden, as I was helping, she like snapped and looked at me, and she's like, "Are you trying to piss me off?" It's very unlike her to make that statement. And I realized like a year and a half later that those are words my mother says. Right, when I'm like engaging, trying to like de-escalate a situation as a child. So I walked away, and I immediately purged, vomited into the bucket. And they say like when you purge through the mouth, it's like fear, letting go of fear. And I asked the bucket, the vomit, what this was, and I saw the seed of life and this like little parasite like try to eat me. I'm like, what the fuck is this? And the medicine said, this is your resentment. You resent being born. You resent being born in your body. You resent being a woman. You resent your mother for having you. You resent here and now everything. And that my illness, the rashes, the hives, the autoimmune, the tiny versicola, the IBS, candida, was my rejection of my body. And I had even more so this inflamed uterus and ovaries and everything. Like when I arrived in the jungle, I had a yeast rash going all the way down my inside of my legs and up my belly. And all of it was because I was trying to, like, even my Reiki teacher was like, you've turned the heat up. You were trying to burn it out and purify it in a way that's just going to kill it. And that's what the medicine just was teaching me, was showing me that, like, I was at odds, and I blamed my body for everything.
And it sounds like you tie that into the sexual abuse. Yeah. Can you say more about that?
So I went away. I came back home to Seattle, and then I went back down a year later and stayed another 3 weeks. And, the intelligence of the medicine is just something else. It's radical. It really unfolds in time. Like one of my favorite teachers says, healing is like peeling an onion. You're going to have to layer after layer. You can't go straight to it. Or it's really like you can't cut an onion and get to the core of it and still have that pearl. It's a different dissection, right? So if you want it to be whole, it's layer by layer. So it really wasn't until I went down a year later that I was ready to sit and accept. And I actually went up to my teacher who was facilitating the ceremony, and beforehand I asked him if he could hold that space and witness that I was going to go in and investigate what this possible trauma was. And he was like, did I know about this? He's known me for years. He's like, how did I not know about this? Like, did you tell me and I forgot? And I said, no, I haven't been ready to admit that it might be a thing. I didn't even know for myself at that point. But the knowledge from the early teens, the theatrical background, the beginnings of what the other ceremonies were showing me, it was kind of like I needed to go find out. And many other people talk about losing time in certain parts of their history. And so there's this time where I can remember really traumatic other things happening, like social things or extreme penalization from a teacher. But then it's like from 7 to like 9 years old, I can't remember most of it. And if I look back at photos, before then it's like dresses and tights and long hair. And then all of a sudden it's pants, shirts, short hair. Like you could see the child I was at one point and this intense shift that happened at another point. And so at one moment I was ready in ceremony to ask and to sit with that. So I go into ceremony, drink the tea, start to go in with that intention. And as it starts to bubble up, these just like emotions again. And I remembered it from the psilocybin experience from that first time, those emotions in my chest, like that intense heat, anxiety, shortness of breath starts to bubble up. And because I have years of experience, I was able to pause in the medicine and in the ceremony and say, loving ayahuasca, I do want to heal from this trauma. I do need this validation that it is. But is it necessary for me to see, to witness in order to heal from the trauma? And she said, no, it's not necessary for you to relive this. So I just felt my eyes go heavy and I almost like blacked out, passed out. And then I woke up and I was drenched in sweat. Like the mat, my clothing, the pillow, the blanket were soaking wet. So I had like sweat and shaken, which we know a lot about somatic emotional body release. Yep.
Absolutely.
So I had just sweat and shook and cried as I was laying there almost in sleep on the mat. And I got these like glimpses of knowingness. It's like not a visual, but I have so many visuals actually that have haunted me that it was almost like she was taking these sort of memories and going, you're valid. Those are connected. But she didn't need me. And I guess at the time I didn't need to flush it all out. Which I think a big part of these experiences in ceremony is the work that we have to do afterwards. It's one thing in the ceremony to receive, to understand, there's like a knowingness. And even though there's a knowingness, there's also when you come back into like straight up sobriety, right? That you're like, how much of that was in my mind or not? So you still have to sit and integrate and decide. Mm-hmm. Like even if the plant is going to show you literally, mm-hmm. you still have to decide what you're going to take, what you're going to own, what you're going to integrate. Mm-hmm. And so I have been working with any of the images, no matter how much I can say I know everything we remember is slightly skewed. I get it. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a perspective of a memory. Mm-hmm. So I can take that loosely and I can sit with my own trauma healing different exercises, different meditations. I can take that to my therapist and we can work through unpacking the emotions around something that, whether or not it did literally happen that way, my emotional body perceived it that way, my childhood self perceived it that way. And as innocent or non-threatening as it might have been, it was mostly between two children, though one was older, right? It's still valid that it was traumatizing for me.
Yeah, there's two things that you're talking about that I want to ask more about and comment on. And one is this piece about the fact that when you were in ceremony, you didn't have to see a visual. And I think that survivors of sexual abuse oftentimes have sort of visuals, flashbacks, or kind of just an intense image or memory that can be haunting. And so I love it's so beautiful that you were able to have a conversation with the medicine and, kind of mutually decide, no, you don't have to have more of these. You can do something else. But that the validation still comes. And there's also something I think you're speaking to that is a really important part of confronting sexual violence, which is that there's a lot of pressure and narrative around truth in our culture. And what you're talking about is it doesn't matter whether you remember it in exactly the way that it happened or the way that you feel it went down is the way that someone else feels it went down. What matters is that you experience something in a certain way and there can be that truth and you can follow that truth. And it doesn't ever need to be a sort of really concrete truth that everybody in the world can agree on. That's totally not necessary for your healing. And the question I have is, when you were prepping to go into ceremony and actually deal with the sexual abuse or, kind of engage with it more, were you feeling afraid of what you might see?
Yes.
Because I know that's something that sexual abuse survivors and sexual trauma survivors fear.
Right,
in
wasn't great the first time.
Psychedelic
Don't wanna do it
ceremonies
again.
that they will be forced to re-experience their trauma, and you were afraid of that. Yeah.
I think I'm super passionate about talking about this kind of experience. I'm passionate about sharing, facilitating details with people about ceremonies with plant medicine, because I think if the more we know, the more we can show up and have this interaction. So I felt safe with my facilitator that even though I wasn't going to go up to him and go, I know this happened, can you watch out for me while I'm in ceremony? I knew that I don't know, but I'm going to go ask, can you have my back and watch out for me in ceremony? And he's expressed care and love and no judgment. Mostly just like sadness that could happen to anyone, right? And then to know that these plant spirits, right, they are so intelligent and they are in it for our best interest. And if we walk into it with that intention with them, then it gets to be a cooperative experience. You always get to ask, are you my teacher? Are you a healer? Whether it's psilocybin, peyote, ayahuasca, it's like green tea, right? If you want to like do a guided meditation and meet green tea. Anytime you meet a spirit being of any kind, we are supposed to have sovereignty and say, are you the medicine I'm supposed to work with? Are you here to heal me? Are you who you perceive? Or are you presenting yourself who you perceive to be? And we wait for that validation. And then as we walk then into further ceremony, knowing that this plant spirit is there, yes, to help us. Yes, they are who they present themselves as. They are here for our higher good and healing. Then we get to, people really, they want to launch into the one on totally unknowing. They want to deep skydive into this stuff and have cathartic healing. But, and like mind my bunny rabbit trail, right? Nothing will just happen like that unless we're ready to do it. We have to take a pilgrimage of readiness. Right?
Yeah, and I'm glad you're bringing this up too, because in making this series, I think there's a potential for people to listen in, or just because of the sort of quote psychedelic renaissance that we're in right now, there's sort of this idea that this is almost kind of like the one pill, go have a psychedelic journey, heal everything. It's 15 years of therapy in a night. And it sounds like what you're speaking to is that this was a long journey, that you built a relationship to the medicine over time, and especially around surviving sexual trauma. You know, you are talking about building a trusting relationship with consent. You know, like it's not
so
just it's not just like roll up and, you know, get down to the healing work.
Because why re-traumatize ourselves while trying to heal through the trauma?
Yeah. So you've sat obviously many times, and then it sounded like and you kind of were starting to get into this a moment ago, but I want to ask more about it because I think it is so important, especially in sort of pushing away this concept of the kind of one pill giant catharsis, integration work that you have also done a lot of other things like going to therapy, and I'm wondering if you can say
yoga, meditation, like all things, lots of things.
Yeah.
Because I really personally believe that's where the medicine is at, is that we can be given a tool. One of my teachers says that knowledge can be a heavy burden to carry without application. You know something, but if you're just going to carry it around, and you don't know what to do with it, it's going to start to weigh you the fuck down. And so we get shown these things. And so especially in ayahuasca, I say there's like typically 3 types of healing. There's like the kind of redhead gene experience where you might see nothing. And I've met people who have had profound shifts in their life who have never seen or felt high or anything with ayahuasca. It's all brain chemistry, right? Like undoing trauma, and the hippocampus, the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex all link up, and you get this unbiased perspective. It's really amazing. The second experience, which is most prevalent, is something, some little bit, some feelings, some images, some knowledge that then we have to go and integrate. And then another tiny little might happen is the cathartic. And yet again, that's people who are in a sense ready. And they might not look ready from the outside to you and I. So I've coveted other people's cathartic. I'm like, why them? They were a hot fucking mess. I have been doing this for years. They were ready to receive in whatever state they're in.
Yeah. I love that you're saying this because it sounds like, like some people have kind of a super profound cathartic.
Yeah. The ones they blog about that you're like, oh my God, I want
to. You're Googling, reading.
There's not a lot of blogging of people doing like, I didn't feel anything, but look at how my life has changed.
Yeah, or like I've done 30 ceremonies and now I'm finally experiencing some change
there you
or something.
Go. Right. Nobody's writing about it. Somebody joke about Yelp, you know? You only fucking Yelp if one, you have nothing else to do and you're super pissed off. Like so it's like it's a whole readiness. Really to get to. And I think that that's a testament to the intelligence of the medicine is like, I don't know, when I was tripping balls and having fun in art school, I had a few moments where I can look back and be like, that was deep, that was intense. I had no idea what to do with it. I was not in a place where I was receiving medicine. I was on a mushroom trip. Right. I was like at a club or Oregon Country Fair having this like spiritual experience that wasn't part of my life. I didn't like have that hand in hand yet. And so I had to go all the way around to a point where I think something I held dearly as a validation point is someone said, the truest believers are often the biggest skeptics. And I very much like that. I'm like, this is fascinating, but there's no way. And I dive in and I want to know the science behind it all and like really what's going on for people beyond what's just being handed out. So for the ayahuasca ceremonies, that was a really big thing, was as much time as I do still spend down there, and I go and I sit in ceremony, and sometimes the next morning I'm like, did I just make all that shit up? Really? Is that really a thing? Did I experience or see? And then having the community around to sit and listen and sharing circles were like, that is where big shifts, saying something out loud to another human being or a group, which is like, woo, it sinks into your body.
Mm-hmm. That's a part of the integration.
Yeah. Having people there as you start to make life changes, who witness you, support you as you stumble, as you struggle, that is like where really you can have the knowledge. And then how do you start to move forward to it? Mm-hmm. Like once I did come through that ceremony where I asked about the trauma, and I didn't relive it. It was still like, I kept it almost like a secret. So even though people usually after ceremony are like chit-chatting and laughing, or, you know, all this stuff sharing, it's like I just found one other person who was like, he was a psychotherapist as well. And he was down there doing medicine, and I had spent the 3 months previously, the year before, and so I had a lot of time with this gentleman, and I sat with him and was like, I need to talk to someone about this. Mm-hmm. Would you mind putting your therapist hat on? Mm-hmm. Like, I wasn't even ready to sit with my friends, mm-hmm. right, around it, or this, like, it was still, even as I was still in the medicine coming down, I was still grappling with how to start to integrate something that I had not been even sure that I could own, that was mine to own. So it's like, I've never been on your plate. It really skews everything. And how do I then walk forward into the world, finally feeling validated in one aspect, but now that validation actually brings with it a whole nother identity.
So you've mentioned a little bit about relationships and your relationship with your husband. And I know that for lots of people who have experienced sexual trauma, especially as kids, relationships as adults are so complicated. And I wonder if you can say more about what you noticed going on in your relationship, what that's been like for you. And then it also sounds like you've been in the same relationship as you've confronted your abuse.
We've got like a beginning, middle, and after story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And hindsight. So, like when we first met, like super sweetheart, he was really gentle, and that was super new, right? And so I think that was like what attracted me to him beyond just like all the emotional and like instinctual chemistry is like, intimately, he was really gentle. And then as we started dating more seriously, moved in together, I started noting this like roughhousedness, like this playground, like his instincts were to playground flirt, push, shove, tickle, like things like that in the kitchen. And that started to trigger me.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've never been in this situation. I don't know why this is triggering me. I was totally confused about why I was like, it's not okay. I was like, it's just not okay. Any kind of like intimacy that was, I used to have a boyfriend who would get into fights and he'd force me to hug him, right? It's like, just let me hug you, let me hold you. And it was, I know that there's like a physiology, like there's actually some kind of pheromone in a man's sweat that does calm a woman down. It's wild. So like you get close and you hug and you'll calm down. So one, I told myself when I found that, I was like, you can't use that against me. Like I won't let you hug me to calm me down. And it was like, it always felt, I said, even at one point to my boyfriend in high school, I was like, it just feels like a manipulation. Like you're just hugging me to get to sexuality. Like you don't even want to deal with what we're talking about. You're just going to force it to happen. And that's always what it was hand holding. Any kind of sensuality was like immediately streamlined into sex. And I thought that was just a very natural thing. That it was like an aggressive thing, and definitely like sought out the bad boy, right? In the way that it's like, I want to know I'm wanted. Because I think the whole bad guy, bad girl thing is that these people know what they want. And so when they choose you, you're like, yes, I'm being chosen. So I really needed like someone to choose me, to be really aggressive about it. But then when it came into being intimate in our own house, in my own safe place, like my own bedroom, I really needed a lot of space. And so I went from a young adulthood of aggressive, ridiculous, unsafe sex, strangers, one-night stands, being talked out of my own ethics and morals, like really in that subservient, pleasing way, like, look how much I can please you, look how much power I have and the ability to do all these things. And so when I got together with my husband, it was this really interesting, different dynamic of letting someone in my intimate space into this like other place of longevity, right? So when it was like playground flirt, it started to stress me out and trigger me. And then sexually, we started to just start fighting in the bedroom. Like it was never right. It was never good. He wasn't listening. It always became this thing of I didn't realize that I was constantly being triggered. that by being emotional or vulnerable, not going in it like blackout drunk or aggressive or like power play, but as I was trying to receive and create intimacy with my husband, it was too fucking much.
Yeah.
And I thought he was doing something wrong. Like, you're not listening, you're not understanding, you're not processing, you're not trying. Because that's really where it all boils down to, is the first couple of times that I experienced that kind of intimacy, vulnerability, it was not safe. So I didn't realize that that's what was coming up. So I don't know how we weathered through it, like a decade together.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, we went from a great sexual life to like almost nothing, like almost no sex. I put on a whole bunch of weight. Him and I were both like coping in many other different ways because we do like insanely love each other beyond any kind of logic. But we could not figure out why this intimacy could not work. And
it must have been so painful.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
It was, because it's also a lot of what our culture puts emphasis on, is if you're in a healthy relationship, you should be having sex all the time, right?
Yeah.
And like, there was even this stupid like 30-day challenge. Oprah, I think, like advertised this thing of, if you're in a sex slump, you make yourself have sex for 30 days. We even tried that.
Yeah.
And it became this trauma of like trying to fight and force our way into having sex.
I love Oprah. That's too bad, because she's kind of like one of the most like prominent forces in bringing out child sexual abuse as like a really significant thing going on culturally. And also, I'm sorry that 30-day challenge happened and that you were doing it, because I know, as for sexual abuse survivors, when it's like, well, just do it, you just gotta go for it.
Yeah.
It's not, that's
You're totally going to be able to break through, press through, push through for, no.
Because the reason you're not having sex isn't because of a sex slump. It's something else. Yeah,
and we are like, we're super horny. We're like talking about, why do I feel like flirting with other people? Because it's safe.
Yeah.
Because I can flirt and do other things with people, but like the excitement before sex, so fun. And then as soon as it gets to sex, panic.
Yeah.
And it really was something else to like start to deal with. The first time I went away to the jungle and came back, right? And I'm more in my body and dealing with being in my body. And I'd been sick, so the body had been sick. So from the first to the second time I went down, there was about 10 months of like readjusting in the body and still being afraid to have sex because it had manifested into these intense yeast infections, right? And I did not realize that we'd also been intimate for years while I had been intensely inflamed. So the sex was painful in a way that I didn't realize was painful because I didn't know anything else. So there were all these things that were just like aggravating the situation that you could see, you couldn't see, and he couldn't do anything about it. Like he's also got his own trauma. So he's being triggered, and I'm being triggered, and we're just triggering the heck out of each other.
Little trigger fest.
And we're like, can we quit trying to have sex and go get a drink now? Because like, I can't handle it. So when I came back the first time, I was still working through the identity of illness. So there was another 9-10 months where it was like everything's sensitive and tender emotionally and tricky, and I think that's when it's like you've almost hit water, when you're digging in the sand and it starts to get wet and you're like, oh, there's something else underneath this I didn't realize from the surface. So that next 9-10 months was like, okay, I'm back in my healed body. Everything's healthy again. Why am I emotionally triggering? It's clearer, right? It's even more clear because there are less symptoms around it. That at one point we were like fooling around, getting intimate. It's not too much information, right? And he went to put his knee between mine to separate my legs. And I panicked. We were totally fine. We're healthy. We're happy. We're laughing. We're like, great. And that just sent waves of panic. I want to cry right now. Just like this feeling of, it's friendly. It's fine. It's okay. And then it was just not. And I still have like had that feeling, like even the other night, I just had to make it a point to shift my body into a more readiness so that that familiar place of imposition and force was not there. It's like, it's just something that a knowingness now, right? The integration I know what I need. I'm not going to like let him stumble on this.
Yeah. And to clarify, I mean, I guess I'm wondering if what you're saying is that the difference now isn't necessarily that you wouldn't be getting triggered.
Right.
It's more about how you're dealing with being triggered.
I'm becoming more aware of certain ways in, certain postures, certain movements or words are triggers. Right. And so if a trigger for me is feeling dominated in a missionary position to start out with, then I need to initiate and I need to articulate that I have to be in control first. I have a whole conversation about consent with my own body.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, there's going to be consent between me and this other person, but first I'm going to check in with myself, scan my body, and say, are we in joy of this? Are we ready for this? Are we ready to allow this other person inside? And that, like, I have a conversation about it being intentional and loving, and I have to at that point, like, at this point of being knowing, it's like, it's important for me to take those steps so I don't trigger in the middle, during, after, so that there's no guilt or shame afterwards that I didn't listen to myself, because I'm also could see that one of the symptoms is when you're in it, you just check out. So
You've done a lot of checking out. Yeah, where you kind of quote consent.
Yeah.
But you're kind of rolling with it and disassociated.
Yeah. And I've like learned how to do my job well, so I can like seem like a participating partner in it. But I am so much more focused on them. It's like I'm not in my body thinking about my feelings or what's good for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, and I feel like maybe as women, there's a whole layer of like, you know, turn the lights down and like being concerned about what I look like. But I have been so hyper focused on don't be here about this for you. Don't feel this pleasure. It's just like too vulnerable. It's too scary, too raw. And so by focusing on it being like an activity, a task, you know, it's like, let's get the gold star at the end.
Yeah. Do a good job.
Yeah. And then I would lose myself because I start to do and engage in a way that isn't my authentic self.
Sure. And it's not it sounds like you're saying it's not about a mutual exchange of being in your bodies together.
Yeah. Which is, wow, is that intense? Is that vulnerable? And it's beautiful being in a place where I'm aware of this now, right? And like taking the steps and being in a place of practicing it consciously, like how to come to this, especially since him and I have been together for 12 years. So it does have that safety, technically, you know, this should be a safe place for me. And there's nothing in the environment that says it's not. It's still that trauma in my body.
In addition to talking about her relationship with her husband, I asked Kate about any healing that has come around relationships with people who were bystanders to her abuse, like her mom or other people who were there when she was a kid.
I constantly am like, if it had happened now, like if I was a child now, and there's so much conversation around it, would it have been noticed? Versus back in late 1980s, when maybe people just weren't really talking about it, and so there wasn't anything noticed. I wondered why I always had urinary tract infections and yeast infections, and the doctor and my mom never thought anything of it. Like, I remember taking baths and just being like really hyper fixated on my own private parts, and in ways that like nobody, I was just like, why was it all about this all the time? And never any interest in, you know, it's like, I think I joked about my mom's emotional availability, you know, like single mom, 2 kids, school teacher, kind of like making it all barely work. So I spent most of my time in daycare at this woman's house, and she had, it was like her family was there. And so that's where I believe it did happen. That's where I remember it all happening, was with who I believe is her son. Again, it was like a really large family. And for a certain number of years as I was in their care. And I remember every morning waking up like sick to my stomach, and I would cry, and I'd be like, I can't go today, like, please don't make me. And then she would drop me off and I would cry and I would cry. And then like in the summertime when she was at work and I was out of school, I'd spend all day there and I would just like sit at the table and not eat my food because you couldn't get down until you eat your food. And I didn't want to. Like I didn't want to leave because then it's just like chaos. And I remember being just so stressed out. Anytime we were playing or doing anything, like clocking who was around and not going to the parts of the house or the yard where things were like harder to see, just feeling always like I had to like take care of myself in that space.
Oh, I love that your kid self knew not to eat the food so
Yeah.
you could stay at the table where you're getting a lot of attention
Yeah.
from adults, even though it's probably...
It sucked. Like, I have food issues to
Yeah.
this day of, like, needing to eat all the food. And, like, I take forever. Even my husband is like, oh, my God, you take forever to eat. And it's just, like, it's what I've always done. And then I would make friends with her daughter. I made best friends with her daughter so that I was around her all the time. It's like, try to have an ally in the space. You know, just always try to be around wherever the adults were or have someone with me. But even then, you know, things just happen and all of a sudden we're like playing doctor or, you know, other things in like little corners behind couches. And so nobody noticed. Nobody noticed that I was upset. Nobody noticed or didn't validated that I was upset for a reason. And I was fine once I went to school. It was always in that intermediate area. And like the panic, the sickness, the sadness. And then coming home, you know, it's like just when my mom would try to do homework with me and everything, it was just like emotions everywhere. Just screaming and crying, just like so angry, so frustrated that I had no control. And nobody would notice, you know? It's like I don't have words. I'm like 6 years old. But it was tough. Like the nanny was just like always, she's a very abrasive human being, caretaking to an extent that she's exhausted, you know, so it's just way off her radar.
You mean the woman who was running the daycare?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think she's, you know, just like an enormous, like 7 or 8 kids her own. And then on top of it, like 7 or 8 or not more kids that she was taking care of. And a whole bunch of them were infants. So we were always even helping like feed the babies and all that stuff. She's just like, everything there was too much time for things to happen and not enough time together as a community to like process anything that was really going on. The kids were just always in and out. And then, you know, it's just, and then we moved. So moved a whole bunch and it wasn't an issue anymore. And I was just left with who I was after that. And that's where like, you know, the photos, like I even started gaining weight, like at 9 or so years old, I started noticing in the photos, like just doing everything I can to put barriers, to shield. And I, you know, it's very clear to me that my mother, she said to me, my freshman year of college, I came back and I visited after she had visited me at school. And she was just done with my honesty. Like I'm a black sheep because I notice people's pain and I mention it. Don't you want to fix it? And people are like, fuck you for noticing this thing that hurts. I don't know what to do about it. So I do that a lot. In art school, I mean, it's a community of people who are traumatized, who are hurt, who are using it to create and who are articulating things and sharing stuff with each other that's blowing my mind. And I'm feeling like I am me and I can take up space. And my mom visits and notices how happy I am. And then I go back down for Christmas and she said this thing. She's so pissed off at me for being who I am. She goes, Katie, I don't know why you put on this show, why you lie to everybody. She's like, up there at school, everybody loves you. You're happy, you're nice. They all say wonderful things about you. But when you come home, you're just mean and angry. Like, she's really, really thought that I was coming home and changing who I was instead of realizing it's an environment. That like these people witness, love, see me as who I am and accept me. And that my mother wanted me to fit a certain box and be that way. And that living in that reality doesn't work. So I got a very clear picture from the beginning that we know now that when we say, you make me mad, you can't make anyone feel anything, right? Like I'm choosing to be mad at your actions, reactions, like whatever it is. There was a lot of my mother saying, you drive me crazy. You are too much. You are angry. You, Katie, you. And I can see now that she was overwhelmed in her own life and didn't have the capacity or the ability to separate those things. So, I mean, my mom joked, like, as soon as I could walk, I wanted my own apartment and a credit card because I wanted to get the fuck out of this relationship. Like,
you're like, get me out of this
get
womb.
out, get me out of the womb, get me out of this house, get me out of this place, this reality, get me out of this body, like, get me out. So when, like, I had the ceremony and I started to, like, integrate this concept, maybe this is who I am, maybe this is why I am the way I am, maybe this thing happened to me. I turned to that therapist, that gentleman that was there, that I intentionally sat with him because he is my mother's age and he has children my age. And I asked him, if your children were to come forward and tell you that they remembered in their childhood this abuse, would you be ready? Would you be willing? What would you do? Is this something that I should even bother with? Because I have been so well managed and groomed by my mother to not put more shit on her plate. That, like, if I go tell my mother, and this is what I got from this gentleman too, which now we're having different conversations about here today, but at the time, he said, what could she do about it? Why would you give knowledge to this woman that this thing happened to you and now she's powerless? She can't apologize for it. She can't fix it. Are these people, like, in your life now? No, we moved away. So he said, deal with it. You go, you heal. You figure it out for yourself. You don't need her to validate or do that healing. But then also he says she doesn't ever need to know either.
Yeah, and we talked before this interview, before the recorded part of the interview, and I kind of gave my opinion on that.
Which I love. Thank you so much. Because it feels like another burden.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like if I really want to heal my relationship with this caretaker, this nurturer, this mother of mine, then it's no longer about me protecting her from this. Like, I don't need to expect her to apologize. And that's my own work I have to do around it, right? It's like, when I bring this to her, if our old patterns are me looking for validation and she is unable to, then when I bring this to her, I have to be ready.
Yeah. And in what the therapist told you, it sounds like there is this wisdom in that, which is she may not be able to validate you, see you, apologize, just witness you in who you are. And so you may need to do that healing on your own. And it sounds like that therapist kind of spoke to that. I think, just for clarification for people who are listening, my thoughts on that were just that I don't think that not telling her is the answer because she can't do anything about it. Because if she was able to hear you, listen to you, it's about knowing you.
Yeah.
It's about being in relationship with who you are.
And that really resonates with me.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that your mom has the capacity to do that. I don't know.
We'll find
just
out.
that this sort of a narrative that you wouldn't tell your parents because it's a burden to them.
Right. Like, I want to keep her from that pain, that hurt, but it feels like I've heard that from her in other ways, and that ultimately I know has never been a good thing. Keeping knowledge from someone because you don't want them to witness the pain or to burden the knowledge, actually, like, in hindsight, has not been helpful for me.
Well, and so many people who experience sexual trauma do feel like they need to hide it and not burden people with it. And what I have noticed over many, many years of talking to survivors and talking to people who are partners of survivors and, just really doing a lot of communicating about this in my communities is that oftentimes the way people feel is closer to you when they know.
Yeah, I think it would clarify a lot. I think that she will have a lot of sadness and guilt. Because when you think about it, and then you're going to go through and you're going to replay everything. And actually, I would hope that. Like, I would hope that someone would care enough to feel that. And then I hope that they're inspired enough to show up in it. That this doesn't become a thing for her or about her, but hopefully she can kind of see my journey and and why we've kind of have the relationship we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, again, the integration.
Yeah, thank you so much for being willing to talk with me today. And I really hear that, just to kind of frame things a little bit for people who are listening, that we're talking to you, you are on a journey, and it sounds like we're talking to you at a point in it where there's so much that's being processed, and also that you're naming so many things that are kind of on the horizon, other things that you're planning to work on or that you're in the process of working on. And not that surviving sexual trauma is something where we ever get to a sort of, okay, I'm done. Like that was all survived. But just that I'm so appreciative that you're sharing your story at this point in the process, and exactly where you are, and that we're getting to experience a little bit of that with you.
It's a big thing to speak it out loud.
Yeah.
And I felt like this was offered to me at a time where I was ready. I'm really grateful that you're doing this, because I haven't felt like I had someone I felt safe enough around. Like you kind of had said that most of the people who are coming forward and doing this have some kind of knowingness or relationship to you, so they feel safe. And I think that's what it is ultimately to share this in a way that isn't just spectacle, right? But that we can come together and validate each other's experiences.
Absolutely.
Like if anything, we're here for each other.
Absolutely.
All right. Again, many thanks to Kate for sharing her story and wisdom. During ayahuasca ceremonies, there is often singing, and the songs that are sang are called Icaros. At some point during the interview, I took a bathroom break and I left the recording going. When I sat down to edit the audio, this is what I found during the part where I'd been out of the room. If you enjoyed this episode and want to support the show, please subscribe to the podcast. If you would like to stay connected, you can find me on Instagram at Laura May Northrup. And finally, special thanks to Joey Seward at Left Field Studios for volunteering a lot of additional audio engineering to make this series possible. If you need an audio engineer, he's excellent. You can find his website in the show notes. Thanks for listening to Inside Eyes. Until next time.